Welcome back to the studio. Let's talk about leather groover tools. And they do a couple great things when you're working in the studio. So we're going to look at a few things. The first is, what do the groover tools do? Second, we're going to look at a few examples and how they work. And then third, you'll learn some good tips to have in mind when you're looking to purchase or use a groover in the shop. So with that, let's dive right in. So groover tools are used to cut grooves in leather. And if we take a look at this example here, we have a leather belt that has some grooves in it. Now these are decorative grooves, and they run along the edge of the belt. And these could also be used to sink your stitching into, because generally we want the stitching protected on leather goods, and that way when an item is being used, the rubbing from wear and day-to-day use doesn't wear that stitching down. So often a groover is used to make that groove so the stitching can then sit in it, or it can be used for decorative purposes, as we see on this belt, to simply put an aesthetic line that runs along the length of a belt or any other leather item. And so that's primarily what they're used for, and there are a few different types. The first one is essentially a gouge. And this is a separate tool. I'm going to mention it only briefly in the groover conversation, because we can use this gouge to cut a groove in this leather material, which can then be used as a decorative groove or to set your stitching into. And it essentially will, cut a groove in that material, like that. And you can adjust this to make it deeper or shallower. And then the deeper you press it, generally the wider your cut's going to be. So in a way, we could use this gouge as a groover, but it's not the primary type of groover, and we'll look at that next. So here is our primary type of groover, and it is called a stitching groover. And what we've got is we have a wooden handle, and then we have usually a metal front with an adjustable gate. And if we unscrew this here, you'll see that this slides in and out, and that creates essentially different widths between the grooving piece and our edge. For example, if we take this piece of leather and we want to groove it at a certain distance from the edge, we could then adjust this gate to be further out or closer to our cutting edge. And that essentially will allow us to set the distance like so. And then here it's a little further in, we can set it to be a little closer to the edge. So that's how that works. And then in here is our actual grooving tip. It's basically a little metal cutting edge. Here's the top, and you can see in the bottom where that edge is. And it's got a little circle, and that's where the leather will feed through as we're cutting it. And then let's just do a quick look at how that works. Generally, we're going to set our fence width here. Let's go a little closer. Tighten that up, and then we'll start up here. And then hold it firmly and draw it towards us. And we can see as we're doing that, it's generating this leather scrap that's coming out. And then if we look at the edge, we've got a nice straight line that runs the length of that leather piece, all equidistant from the edge based on how we set our fence width. So it's really cool. It's actually a lot of fun. And these are even fun when you kind of get these little loop-de-loop scraps. And so that's how we do that. Now you could definitely push harder to get a deeper groove out of that. If you want your stitching to sit deeper, or if you're using thicker, heavier thread, you may want a deeper cut in there. And so all that is certainly possible. And that's basically how it works. The adjustable guide makes it usable for a lot of different, items. Now, if you noticed, this end has some other hardware is part of it. And so let's explore that. And our second type of groover, it's going to be our scratch groover. So first thing we'll do is we will get a little Allen key here, we'll put it in and loosen this up. And that'll make our regular groover tip come out. And here's how it looks, just as the tip itself. And then we've got another tip here that looks like this. And this is going to be our scratch groover. So whereas before we were removing material, now we're going to set it so it just leaves a mark, essentially a scratch. So we put that in there, and then use our Allen key to tighten that up. And now you can see we have a different tip. Whereas before we had our tip that would essentially remove that leather, now we just have this. So let's check it out. We'll do the same thing. We have our fence set to where we want it to be. We're going to the edge of the leather material here. And then we're just going to press in, pull it towards us. And what it leaves us with is a scratch. And you can see right here, again, it's equidistant from the edge, and it makes a nice line. Now that could be used to mark your stitch line, like if you were going to use stitching chisels or any kind of a pricking iron, that would give you a consistent line from which you could then use those tools to make your stitching holes. If you were going to be sewing on a machine, it could do a similar function, or it could give you an aesthetic look that if you want that on your leather item, that could be enough just on its own. So if you look, here's our groove. Basically, where it's cutting it out, it's going to be a stitching groove, a little deeper. And then here's our scratch groove, just a little more subtle, a little less deep. And you can kind of see right next to each other. Our stitching groove, a little deeper, scratch groove, a little higher. And that's that. So this tool is an adjustable one. You could definitely find tools out there that are only, for one of those tasks or the other. If you're just getting into it, having these could be useful because you can get a feel for each without having to invest purely in a full tool. So let's check out a few tips. First would be, make sure that you get a quality item. Like any tool, it will perform better and will actually help you get a better feel for how these tools work if you're using a better one. It doesn't have to be expensive, but usually the cheapest is not the best option in most cases. And for just a tiny bit more, maybe 10 or 15%, you could find a tool that can perform a lot better and you'll enjoy it a lot more. Second thing is make sure where possible to keep them sharp. Like any edge tool, even though this one has a relatively small cutting tip, you still want to keep that sharpened where possible, and that way the results in your leather goods are going to be clean, precise, just like any tool would do. And then 3, try out different ones. Find out which brand you like, which one feels best in the hand, and which one gives you the best results for the type of work that you do. Because once you find that, this is the kind of tool that is like others in leather craft, which is really great, where if you get a good one and you like it, it'll probably last you decades or longer with proper maintenance and use. And so there you have it. That is the scratch and stitch groovers for leather and kind of what they do and a few things to keep in mind when purchasing them. So if you have any questions, let us know. And if you have any experience with this tool you'd like to share, we would love to hear about it and help others learn as well. So until next time, keep crafting.